can be very strategic. We can create alliances in places that we want to, but more importantly, based off of shared things that we enjoy.
Hey guys, the Way podcast is going to be super jam-packed today because Michelle Berman-Mikel is so outspoken and so well-spoken that I actually barely had to ask her or be involved in this conversation at all. She just kept going the whole way. So I'm going to tell you who she is. She is a coach to real estate agents and to loan officers, and she teaches them basically how to prospect in social media, not by getting the dopamine hit of how many likes you got and how many comments and all that, but actually, are you making money from it, right? So true strategy into how to make money through social media. She's also an author of The Black Line, just coming out right now in pre-order. She's the creator of Beyond the Method, I guess the program that she teaches, and she's a host of the Coffee and Questions podcast. So there's a lot coming here. She's gonna share some things with us, a lot about the Black Line, which is the book she wrote, and that's because she was a swimmer. So when you're swimming, she goes, all you got to do is follow that black line, and you know that if you follow it, you're going to get to where you need to go. Right? Forget about tomorrow. Forget about distractions. Follow the black line. So I think there's a lot we can learn there just in business in regards to that. So you'll hear about that. I love this story about the horses. So I forget what kind of horse they were, but like a horse that pulls weight, right? A single horse can pull 8,000 pounds of these type of horses. Two horses together can pull about 24,000 pounds, but two horses together that were related can pull up to 32,000 pounds. So the power of being in sync, I think, is super important here, and you'll hear a little bit of a story about that. And then overcoming personal loss, but finding the lesson in it. And I think that's super important because we've all experienced loss, but what's the lesson in it? How do we overcome it? How do we move past it and not let that determine what our future is going to be, right? Because it's our past. So that's what you're going to be hearing today. And I hope you enjoy the show as much as I did. Hey, everybody, we're back with the Way with Ethos podcast. And I'm super excited today because we actually are doing something new. This is the first person that has not been in the mortgage industry, at least like directly doing loans, right? So I want to bring on Michelle Berman-Mikel, and I think I'm excited because after we spoke that one time, Michelle, just to kind of prepare for all of this, I realized how aggressive you are, and how like that I'm going to take no prisoners type of an attitude, and I really liked it. I was like, you know what, let's do this because I think out of everybody that's been on here, you're going to actually have like the most tactical advice that out of everybody. So first, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Oh my gosh, well, thank you. And I hope aggressive can be defined in a softer way. I don't know if that, but
Maybe, but I think by the time this is over, we'll ask everybody else. I'm sure they're going to see what I saw.
I promise I love people. I swear.
So Michelle, the whole show is we're here to empower, equip, and educate people the way lending should be done, and in my opinion, the way life should be done. But in this case, we're doing it by the best in the business, and you are a high performance coach. How would you actually describe yourself? I say high performance coach, but is there a better way of describing what you do?
Yeah, so my, quote unquote formal title, if you will, is social media prospecting expert. So I teach people, mortgage real estate professionals, how to outbound prospect through the social channels. That is my superpower, right? So being able to teach you, for example, or any high performing, even low performing for that matter, mortgage professional, how to look at Instagram and LinkedIn as a opportunity, not a place to just dump things, right? Or just to show up, but instead to use it as a bridge builder between I have this relationship with this person that I don't know, and I have a relationship with this person over here that I do know. How do I close that gap? Right. So my real, quote unquote title being a social media prospecting coach. But it really comes down to teaching people how to not just produce content to produce content, but instead to use your content as the foundation for how you will then prospect on the platform. And just to be clear, prospecting means you are intentionally sending a message to someone that you do not know on the platforms, I'm not talking about, well, I'm commenting on something randomly and just hoping that that person turns into a follower. No, I'm talking about like we are sending a message to someone with the intention of getting an opportunity, and whatever those defined opportunities for us, we gotta work through that and figure out what those need to be for you. But you have a single daily goal to create one of those opportunities, which in turn makes a booked call on your calendar or an appointment that you have, which is how we win in the industry.
Got it. And I think just to try and stay true to the format of the show, even though you weren't in the mortgage industry, I still want to kind of keep the same format, which is who are you today, right? Which you just kind of told us, and there's more coming because I know you just wrote a book. It's not out yet, but will be soon. You have a podcast as well, so talk a little bit about that, but just a little bit, and then I want to go back to day one of how, why, where, when you started, and then just all hit all the major milestones back to today again, and then really get into some like tactical advice of how to help people.
So I think the best one for me to talk about, of course, is the Black Line. So I have officially written my very first book. It actually is available for pre-order. So Dino, I'll make sure to get that to you because I would love for you to read it and give me your feedback before it hits like major market. But I think the book is the biggest thing. It's really a culmination of everything I feel like I was put on this planet to do, truly. As a woman of faith, I really believe that I was designed for a specific purpose and for a cause, if you will, and to have a voice that was meant to be shared. And I wasn't really sure what that was for a long, long time until I had the storm of my life happen late last year. And when that storm happened, the book really was birthed truly, in the sense of the table of contents got changed. And I was like, no, this is what we are doing. Let's freaking go. So the book itself is called The Black Line. That's the big thing for me right now. Um, I am, obviously a coach, so I do a lot of coaching, a lot of speaking, a lot of webinars, that type of thing. But the book's my, what's right in front of me thing.
Awesome, and I am super excited to read that. And later when we get back to the journey, I want to kind of dive into that a little bit because I know that was a huge storm that you told me about, and I think it'll be good for everybody to hear the reason behind it. What about beyond the method? What is that?
Sure. So Beyond the Method is the name of my course. So back in 2019, I can go back a little further before that to how we birthed Beyond the Method in 2019. But Beyond the Method itself is a course that I built after I discovered a major, major hole in the game of social, which was that everyone was teaching virality and nobody was teaching utility. And I realized that my success in the industry had nothing to do with going viral, had nothing to do with how many followers I had, how many likes I was getting, or my, quote unquote engagement, but instead really had everything to do with the fact that I was a master prospector. And in order to get the calls on my calendar and to get the opportunities to get in front of people, I had to be really good at talking to people and networking essentially, but doing it through social being kind of the superpower. So Beyond the Method was built in 2019. And if I go back to 2014 of how that came to be, in 2014, I graduated, or almost, I guess technically I didn't graduate. It's a complicated, convoluted story, but um, I graduated from Rutgers in 2012 and got my almost master's degree in 2014. I actually quit right before I did my thesis. So I did everything but the 40-hour thesis. And I kind of laughingly say that, nowadays the Beyond the Method is the thesis that I didn't have to pay a lot of money to go do. Now I get paid for it instead. But I remember my parents being mortified when I told them that I had quit. What? You're so close. But so in 2014, I finished that and went to work for a small social media public relations firm based out of Palm Desert, California. I was living in Michigan when I was going through school for my master's, and my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 non Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I decided I needed to go home. So I hadn't been home for a long time. Went to college in 2008 and didn't go home until 2014. So math wise, what is that? 6 years since I had been home per se. And I made that decision very quickly to go home and got a job at this small kind of boutique public relations company. And at the time, it was really Facebook and Twitter for the most part. That was pretty much it. And I'll just say it this way, my boss went to Harvard, had all of her plaques on her wall, lots of, look how awesome I am everywhere. And I will never forget it because I wrote a press release for one of the clients, and it was specifically around like the social campaign that was launching and kind of this big press release announcing that they were finally going to have a presence here, blah, blah, blah. And I wrote the press release and it never got released. And I was really confused. So I remember walking into her office and saying, just out of curiosity, where's the press release that I wrote? Because I haven't seen it. And she's like, "Oh, well, you had some grammar in the wrong spot or like some grammar issues and some colons in the wrong spots and, commas and things. So we actually tossed it and I rewrote it and we published it already." And I was like, "What? Like, was the writing okay? Like, was the article itself fine?" And she's like, "Oh, the writing was great. It just didn't match what, we needed grammar-wise, so I just quickly redid it." And in my mind, I was just like totally floored by this, right? I'm just like, "Couldn't you have called me into my or me into your office and like had a conversation with me like an adult about this?" But and mind you, she was probably 10 years older than me at the time. And so I just felt very slighted. And in that moment, I made a decision that based off of how the company kind of was going, that I didn't want to be a part of it. So I walked into the boss's office, my boss's boss, like the boss, and I said to her, "I'm out. Like, I don't need 2 weeks. I'm out." And that weekend, I went door to door finding companies that would say yes to paying me to do their social media. And I remember walking in and saying, "I don't know you guys. I know you don't know me. I know you don't know, my pedigree, haven't seen my resume. But what I can tell you is I want to do your social. I'm going to charge you 500 bucks a month. And I have no idea what I'm doing, but I promise you that I'm going to be in here at least twice a week and we're going to figure it out together." And I had 8 clients in a weekend. And it was pretty instant and fast for me. And it was amazing, right? And in that process, I slowly entered the influencer world, which, if you're familiar with the concept, that essentially means, people were buying and selling ads on the platform to get visibility. So in 2016, I bought 2 Instagram accounts for roughly 20 grand, roughly. So I bought these 2 big influencery type pages that I was buying and selling ads for clients that were reaching out. So for example, if a company had like a LaCroix, for example, we'll just use them as an easy example that everybody knows. LaCroix would reach out and say, "Hey, Michelle, if we give you X amount of dollars, can you create some ads, write some copy, and then choose which Instagram accounts to go put these ads on?" Yes, great. So I would design the ad, write the copy, and then reach out to the account and say, "How much for an hour? How much for 2 hours? Whatever." Right. So I did that for 4 years. And in the process, I got very, very good at sniffing out the crap, right? Fake video views, fake eyeballs in any capacity, fake followers, all of it, right? I could sniff it out from miles and miles away. And also, more importantly, I got very good at understanding what people actually want and how the audiences react to certain things. So I just studied it. And in 2018, the writing on the wall kind of happened. The influencer space that I was in started really slowing down. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to hire a coach and I'm going to figure out how to turn this into a course so that I don't have to live vicariously through, commission coming in every single day or not." So I actually went to the UK. It was the first time I'd ever left the country in my life. Went to the UK, spent 8 days there, mind mapped out and masterminded with this gentleman and his wife, and came home with Beyond the Method in the back of my mind, and fired all my clients and started over building Beyond the Method. And it officially launched in July of 2019.
Did you come from a self-employed background with your family?
No, not at all. Nope. Oh, I am the only business owner in my family on either side.
So you just quit and hit the streets?
100%. Yeah. My parents were beyond mortified.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great though. I love it. I was gonna tell a story, but I know we're short on time, so so I want to keep up with your story instead of mine. So then, as far as that goes, right? Like now you're basically in the same industry, but starting kind of a whole new side with brand new clients, brand new everything. How did that come about? And just like, oh, let's call it any mortgage advisor out there, that's brand new has to go out and hustle, has to get trust and likability and all these other things that are essential for getting somebody to say, yes, I will use you. I mean, you went through the same exact thing.
Absolutely.
How did that turn out?
In the beginning it was weird, right? Of course, for everybody, we got to find our way and figure out how to send messages and what kind of people do we want to work with, what kind of people do we not want to work with. I think everybody falls victim to that. And I'll start by answering, why mortgage because I think this is a big question I get a lot. And I'll tell you, from my perspective, it's a personality match for me, right? Because a mortgage professional has to go out and create their own business. It's not handed to them in any way, right? So the grittier individual is typically the one that's gonna win. And I will say somebody asked me earlier today actually on a call. They're like, Michelle, do you know what your disc profile is? And I'm like, yeah, it's a really high D, very high I. I'm off the charts on the D side. But what I can tell you is we're drivers, right? We have to be. We have to fight and we have to figure it out. And so I think that's where I fell in love with the mortgage space because one, the people were like me in a lot of cases where I was at the time I was in Arizona actually when I built Beyond the Method because I had moved from Palm Desert to Arizona. Um, and so I found a
You
mortgage
you
office.
just you just like it hot, right? Like, you just wanna be in heat.
Yeah, I would not go back to Arizona. I will say, like, I loved living in Arizona when we did, but if I moved back to Arizona for any way or in any way, it would have to be in Flagstaff, like way north in the mountains where it gets cold. And now I live in Tennessee, so it's a very different and much better for me, minus the humidity. The humidity is terrible, but um, yeah, so I walked into a mortgage office and that was my first client on the Beyond the Method side and I simply said I was like, "Hey, I want to come in. I want to teach your loan officers how to prospect on social. I'll teach them classes for you. You guys can use me as bait to get realtors in here so that you can have, conversations with new agents." And it turned into a huge value add for the mortgage company. And in about 6 months of doing that, I had probably generated 50 new agents for the office at least. Um, and not all of them are high producing agents, obviously. Some of them were, more low hanging fruit. But like at the end of the day, that was a lot of new loans for this office, on a yearly basis. Because even if every single one of those only sent one, I mean, you guys do your own math on what 50 new loans in your pipeline for the year would look like. So, it was a really powerful thing that I very quickly figured out, that I was pretty good at, and so that's where the webinar world for me kind of became more of a goal.
I got a question. So, when I first started, granted, it was a long time ago, 28 years ago, maybe even 29 now, geez. I thought you had to be a real extrovert to be good at this. And that comes from I've always said there's kind of two kinds of there's a loan officer and he's more of the lead gen guy. And then there's the mortgage advisor and he has to go out and get his own business, right? He has to go get realtors, financial planners, CPAs, and all that. And I've always been an extreme extrovert. So I just used it and I enjoyed it and I was able to go out and meet people and it was easy for me. Um, but I wonder in today's market with social media, with beyond, the way you teach, right? Like, do you have to be an extrovert? You don't, right? Like, you can just set it up as a system and just let it do its thing.
Well, you have to be involved in the system. So that's one thing. This is not automation. And I want to just be clear there because funny as I was actually just on another podcast, we were talking about AI and where does it live in our world of prospecting? Does it have a home there or not? Right. And the thing about the system in general is we have to be involved in it. But the vehicle being social allows, meaning social media, right? Allows us to not have to be face to face, belly to belly every single day, all day, where our social batteries are negative, right? And instead, we can be very strategic. We can create alliances in places that we want to, but more importantly, based off of shared understanding or shared things that we enjoy, right? For example, how many people love running? I run every single day almost. My husband's a road marathon runner, is doing another ultra later this year in November. Does road marathons 2 or 3 times a year and is also former military. So he's retired, medically retired Green Beret. And so we live in a military community. So you look at that and you say, okay, well, these are kind of my people per se, right? So if you are listening and you have that, go find your people and prospect in the land of where your people are and do it through social so that you don't have to go to a 700 events every single week and feel exhausted. Um, so no, you don't have to be an extrovert, but you do have to be willing to be involved in the process because you can easily automate or over automate yourself out of it.
Yeah. So in your case, again, I'm trying to just relate everything back to the mortgage industry, right? And really just any business. You are now running a business. You've hit some milestones. Um, in the mortgage space, I would say for me, when I hit a major milestone, the best thing I ever did was actually, and it was a big leap because I had to go hire somebody. And it's like, am I going to keep up this production? Am I going to be able to pay for this? Right. But when you do, I, as well as a lot of people that I know, just stepped up to the occasion and actually hit it 10 times harder because now we had the pressure of knowing we had to pay for somebody. But that now allowed us to do so much more work, right? And then eventually we were kind of forced to create some systems because now I had to start working with somebody and learning how to also offload certain things, right? And trust and all that. So in your case, let's hit a milestone. Do you even have to hire anybody, or are you able to do everything?
Oh gosh, no way. No way. Can I do everything? I would drown if I had to do that. So I will tell you, I have 5 full-time employees, myself being the CEO of the company, but I am the face of the company for sure. And I also am the primary salesperson of the company, the only salesperson currently, but I actually just hired a chief marketing officer officially. And that's not public knowledge as far as who it is yet, but it will be soon. And I think you'll know him. I'll say it that way. But for me, over the last year with the growth and trajectory of my own company, I actually read a book by Dave Ramsey. It's called Build a Business You Love. I'm sure many of you listening to this have probably heard it or read it. But I listened to it on Audible, and my husband actually bought it for me like months and months ago. And I finally just one Sunday morning felt called to download it on Audible instead and go on a hour and a half walk and start listening to it. So I did, and one of the things that he talks about in the book is that you can be a bottleneck in your business, and in most cases, the CEO or the person running the company is the bottleneck of it in order for it to get to growth. And I mean, you're laughing, and I share the sentiment because like, holy crap, like what a slap in the face that was. When you realize that that's really true. I have 5 girls, a gentleman coming in as my CMO, and, the biggest and best thing I've ever done is learn to delegate. But I also think that you have to choose the right people because I've made some bad hires. I think we all have. And one thing that Dave Ramsey actually talks about in that book, and by no way am I like, saying go buy Dave Ramsey's book unless you want to, because I think it's a great book. But I'm not getting paid to promote Dave Ramsey's book right now. But what I can tell you is that he tells this story about horses, kind of like the Clydesdales, but it's a British version of that. And what he says is that one horse can pull 8,000 pounds, two horses can pull 24,000 pounds if the horses are not related. But if the horses are related, those same two horses can pull 32,000 pounds, right? So two horses can 4x the production of one if they are related versus if the horses are unrelated, meaning from different, family lines, they can still pull 3 times their weight, which is still incredible if you really think about the math of that. And
So
it
real quick, what was that? It was 8,000, 20,000, and what?
8,000 to 24,000 versus 32. Yeah. Incredible book, guys. Like, but the analogies really more so is what hit me. And I'm on this walk thinking like that's the biggest problem in my business right now is I'm the only person making money. So if I had someone of even 80% of my ability and connection in the or in the mortgage world, right? Or even just really in the marketing world as a whole, what would happen to my company if I did that? So I just immediately went to work and started figuring it out. And I had kind of a running joke with this individual over the year prior. Hey, we should be partners. Hey, we should be partners. And after reading that or listening to that audible, I finally texted him and I said, I think it's time, dot, dot, dot. And he was getting ready to go to church, and as was I. And he's like, let me go to church and I'll call you after. And I was like, okay. And he calls me after church and he's like, oh my gosh, I think you're right. And it was just like this instant thing right away. But, to your point, exposing yourself as the problem, I think is very hard for a business owner. But when we do it, it's very liberating. And I mean, frankly, I'm just really excited about the year to come, especially with the book coming out. Like the timing of all of it is very exciting. But more importantly, I'm really proud to be able to say I can step aside for a second and it's okay that it's not just me doing it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So here's something for you. I've always believed in coaching. Uh, and I believe there's times where, you're in a slump and you kind of just need a little coaching to get out of it. And then there's other times where you're rocking, like you're really busy, everything is going great, but you also need a coach because you're working your tail off way too much. Or you're just not being as efficient as you could, or maybe you are, but you're not able to get to the next level, right? And you're just plateauing.
Yeah.
Did you, as a business owner, seek out coaching? I know you did. You said you went to the UK. You kind of were able to put that whole thing together. But then after that, I'm sure you're hitting these different milestones, places you've never been because you didn't grow up in a self-employed family. You read a few books. That's great. Did you seek coaching at that point
Oh
to
my
learn
gosh.
how to get better at running a business?
A million percent, I mean, there's no way, right? And I think part of it is your proximity to others that have been where you want to be. I think that's a big part of this conversation. I hired a coach after the UK coach that I had initially hired. I worked with him for about a year to get the course off the ground. Video content in the course, like what's the structure, how's it supposed to look, like just a lot of the back end stuff that frankly I had no idea how to do, right? And I remember being in Kajabi on like the help thing, like in the chat box, and my husband would walk in the room and I'd be like really upset and like I'm about to throw my computer across this room right now,
See, I
crying.
said aggressive, aggressive, right? Like
I
everybody agree with me there, aggressive?
but like in the sense of like I had to face some pretty big, insecurities of my own of like I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to figure this out. It felt like I was learning a foreign language trying to get this course built. And so it was incredibly hard. So having a coach there would have been impossible without it. Like there's no way I would have survived that or beyond the method would have been born in the capacity that it was. But I did hire another coach after that, who I actually worked with for almost 4 years. His name is Grant Wise, very, very big in the real estate mortgage space, more so on the real estate side. But Grant and I, we still to this day are great friends. His wife and I have been friends for a long time. And what I can tell you is Grant and I mean, every day, pretty much, I'm doing this. And every morning he would make me text him what's going on in my day to day. Who am I prospecting today? Like he was really pushing me to do what I was already really good at. And even more so, he was really teaching me how to be a leader. Because at the time when I built my company, I was, 28 when I launched Beyond the Method. I didn't know how to run people. Like I was barely old enough to run myself, right? Like, let alone bringing in individuals and hiring people. So Grant was really instrumental in that part of my career. But in 2024, so February of last year, my speaking career really started taking off. And it was very apparent that there was some big changes on the horizon for me. I didn't know I was writing a book quite yet. I'll say that. But I got introduced to Rene Rodriguez. We all know him, and most of us love him, right? I certainly do. But I got introduced to him by one of my number one and most favorite human beings on the planet, Cindy Ertman, who I talk to literally every single day. And she's like, "You got to meet Rene, Michelle. Like, I think he's the next move for you." I was like, "I don't know who that is, but okay." So I got introduced to Renee, got asked to come to Amplify by him and Maddie. Came in February of last year. So it was the very first Amplify that he ever did in his home in Minnesota, which was a really big deal, right? Because he had shifted Amplify away from kind of like the hotel structure to this is in his house now. And in Amplify, there's a picture. It's an iconic picture to me, and it'll probably be something I say forever. But it is him standing next to me. I'm sobbing, crying my eyes out, and he is standing next to me like this with his arms crossed in front of him, and he's just like, "Michelle, why are you crying?" Like, and he was really dadding me almost in that moment. But he was like, long story short, he made me see who I really, really am, and I hadn't seen it in years, right? Like, I was very unsure of who I was. So, long story short, I immediately hired him as my personal coach. He became a mentor to me. He became somebody who I could call for anything, frankly, like whether it was about my marriage or whether it was about my kid or whether it was about work, right? He was just that guy and super supportive. His wife and I got very, very close. And last year, when I was miscarrying, in the process of miscarrying, I actually spoke to Maddie on the phone more than I had talked to my own family, because Maddie herself had had several and just had been through that with herself in her own life and was able to get me through it. So Renee has been so instrumental in a lot of this for me. But he was the one that finally said to me, Michelle, you got to get this book to market and you got to do it now. And so helping me with speaking, helping me with how to articulate my own message, and how to stand in front of a room figuratively, like in real life or virtually via a webinar. Um, I mean, the 6,000 you got to pay to go to Amplify Guys is worth 50 times that, in my opinion. So it's so invaluable.
Something to take away here for everybody is, coaching is super important, and I will say that the top athletes in the world, right? Like, look, Kobe always had a coach for in particular things, right? Like, he wasn't so good that he couldn't seek coaching from somebody else. And I think all of us need to realize that if we want to be best in class all the time, we need to have coaching to constantly be working on us. There is no room for sliding backwards. And I believe without coaching, it's always going to be a little bit of a slide. You'll jump because that's who we are, that's what we do, but you're going to be sliding. So prevent the slide, always be propelling forward. And I think that's a really important takeaway here. I mean, this is what I love about you and just your journey. And I think I like it because you're the perfect example of somebody that didn't grow up in it. It's not like, I mean, I did. My dad owned restaurants and he talked to me all the time about it, right? Like, I wasn't afraid to be self-employed and I wasn't afraid to fail. I saw my dad fail too, but he always said, like, this is why I failed. This is what you shouldn't do again, right? And I would imagine being a brand new self-employed person that's never even been exposed to any of that, it had to be kind of scary. I mean, for me, it was fun. To a lot of people, it's scary. So
Yeah.
I love that whole thing about you. So you brought it up. Let's just go to it now. And this is your book, The Black Line. And you had a miscarriage, and I believe the whole thing stems from that, and your swimming career.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your book and why somebody should buy it.
Yeah, I mean, I think more importantly, if I can, I want to start just by saying that I believe truly that every person is put on this planet to have and share a story, right? We have stories in us. And I think sometimes, or we have a voice in us, if you want to use it or think of it that way. And God gives us these talents that He wants us to use in His glory or in His honor throughout our life, right? And I got baptized at 26, so my faith is still relatively new. I just turned 35, so I'm only 9 years into being a Christian. But what I can tell you about that is, um, I feel like over the last 9 years, I've really discovered why I was put on this planet. And I know we talk about like your why all the time. You got to know why you're doing something. You got to have a true mission statement and a vision and all of those things. And I did not grow up with a lot of affirmation in my life. I grew up in a very, go figure it out and get it done type of a family. And I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm simply saying that like that's just not how I was raised, right? I wasn't raised with good job, honey, you're so awesome, keep going. Like that's not how my life went. Right, and I document this a lot in the book, but my dad's favorite saying to me after every race swimming for my entire career was, "Honey, was that the best you could do today?" And I remember being kinda mad about it sometimes and being like, "Didn't you just see me win my heat, or didn't you just see me, PR my mile by 20 seconds," or whatever it was? Or on the flip side of that, "Didn't you just see me get dead last and, like, totally suck? Like, what do you mean, was that the best I could do today?" And it was a really tough question for me growing up, and honestly, even into my adult life. And what I realized was that my dad was priming me for something. But when I got baptized, I realized that the only affirmation I'd ever need was in our Lord, right? And in our relationship with Jesus. And at the end of the day, He wants us to be doing things that He created us to do so that He can smile at us. And that's our affirmation, right? And I discovered that not that long ago, like what that calling really was for me. Um, but I will tell you, like, the transition, I think, is the best way to get to the next part of this.
Actually,
As
can we pause for a sec?
yeah, sure.
Let's
Sorry.
not let's not transition just yet. Only because A lot of times we don't talk about it enough in the business environment, all that. And I want to just focus on your faith for a minute. Uh, I love the fact that you're so outspoken about it. I now just want to know, uh, you did you grow up in a Christian household at all? Because you said you didn't get baptized till 26. So a lot of people did, but just kind of finally figured it out in their own way at a later age. But you
Yeah.
had no exposure to it.
No. My parents were both of faith. My mom was more on the Catholic side, but not practicing. And my dad was actually raised Jewish. So my maiden name, Berman, checks out. But my dad was Jewish, went to temple, did all of that, was not practicing for most of my life that I can remember, other than like, he would fast here and there. We talked about it a little bit here and there. But on the flip side of that, my parents also never shielded me from it, if that makes sense. They never said, no, you can't go to church. And I would go like kind of to fun summer camp events or things at church with friends, but it was never like, I'm going to church. This is what I'm doing, right? I'm not a person learning about God. I'm just here because I want the free food and I want to jump on the bounce houses because I'm 15, right? Like that it wasn't I just wasn't raised that way, right? And again, they didn't shelter me from it, but they by no means gave me the this is the playbook of what this looks like. Um
So what
so
got you there?
a lot of things, and I'll tell you, the ultimate camel straw that broke the camel's back, if you will, was I was in a very long-term relationship with a gentleman for almost 5 years. We were actually engaged to be married. And 80 days before we got married, I left him, and part of that there's it's loaded there, right? It cost my family $50,000 that we didn't get back and all kinds of other things, but throughout that process, his family were people of faith. We went to church for every holiday, Easter, Christmas, all the stuff. And I slowly started to figure out that there was some peace in it when I was going through a very verbally and physically an abusive relationship for a lot of years, right? So I'm going through this really crappy relationship, but I feel kinda trapped, and the only safety I really felt was when I would read the Bible, and it was like, I didn't even own a Bible, so I just kinda bought my own thinking, like, maybe there's some answers into, like, why is this happening to me, in it, and so that kind of started it or kickstarted it, but actually I got baptized, um, right in the middle of one of our many breakups in our relationship, and I was 26, I left him when I was 28. And I went to church, and when you get baptized, they ask you to like write, why did you decide to say yes to Lord as your, savior and all of those things, right? And it was like this big long paragraph. And what I realized is the only person I had that actually I could still talk to because I'd alienated so much of my family was the Lord, because nobody else will listen. Um, and because truly that's how bad of a situation I was in. Um, so then I left Chris in 2028, January of 2028. And I got a tattoo on my arm of Second Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7, which was the verse that really truly got me through all of that. And anybody who's ever been in a verbally or physically abusive relationship, it's the hardest thing ever to have to walk away from. And you have no idea what's next after that. Like, no idea, because you have no friends. You've alienated everybody. Your parents are pissed. Everybody's mad, right? And you're just very, very lost. And if I hadn't had the Bible, if I hadn't had my faith, I had no idea what was happening after that. None. Right. So I got rebaptized again, because it felt like kind of a calling for me just to sort of reignite my faith after the decision. But Second Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7 on my arm, it's a big cross coming through broken glass. So it looks like shattered glass with a cross coming through it with a tree of half dead, half alive on the bottom. And I wear it very proudly on my arm. And I remember my parents being like, "Couldn't you have put it like on your shoulder or something? Like, why does it need to be on your arm?" And
Why
in
don't you
my mind,
show us real quick? Show
it's
us.
right here.
There it is. All
Yeah.
right.
Um, Better in person, of course, but um, I had this idea just in my mind of like, I want to be reminded of what I survived, right? And I also want to be reminded of the only way forward is faith. That's it. That's all we got. Um, so I don't know if that answers your question in totality, but that's the fast answer.
Yep. I'm always fascinated as to people's journeys, their testimony.
Yeah,
And so now let's transition, right?
sure.
Next part of the book of like why the book came about.
Yep. So, The Black Line is the name of the book. As I probably mentioned here, and as you know, I swam competitively for 20 years. So grew up swimming all the way through college, graduated in 2008. And that was when I kind of, or sorry, 2012. And that's when I officially quote retired from the sport of swimming. But I swam for such a long time that it really was my identity for a very, very long time. And even after graduating from college, I really didn't know who I was for a while because when I didn't have somewhere to be for practice, what did I do with myself, right? Like it was kind of a weird time in my life. So the concept of the black line is as a miler, which was my best event, we had to stare at that thing for a really long time to get from one side of the pool to the other side of the pool to then complete 66 laps in a short course pool, or 30 laps in an Olympic size pool, which is what you see on TV during the Olympics. So long story short, I stared at that thing for a really, really long time, and it became the trusted guide for me, sort of a silent coach, if you will, of if you follow me, you will get to the other side. You'll do a flip turn around and come back, and eventually you'll complete the race or whatever the event is that you're doing. So that's where this symbolism really comes into play. Lane lines being shiny object syndrome in our lives, where we're always sort of pulled in different directions of like, hey, you need this. Hey, you need to adopt this. Hey, you need to do all of these different things. And frankly, it's not that they're not good things. It's just that we don't need more of them. Right? So the symbolism of lane lines in the story, is designed to keep us in our lane, keep us focused on what's right in front of us, not what's happening tomorrow, not what's happening on Thursday, but so on and so forth. So I'll kind of give you the high level overview of the book as a whole, but that's where the symbolism of the black line kind of comes into play. Um, but really the book itself, I'll tell you, is really for every high performer, any creator or leader, any entrepreneur who has really ever wondered or asked themselves the question of how do I keep going when no one's clapping for me? And again, built around that metaphor of the black line, steady and really just quiet, frankly, like it didn't really talk back to us. It was just there. But my hope is that the book itself shifts or creates this powerful shift away from chasing dopamine and instead sort of seeking a life that is anchored in discipline and a very clear direction from point A to point B. So, long story short, getting and staying very focused on what matters most, and swimming forward even when you really don't want to, is the hardest thing to do, truly. So, the story of the miscarriage and where that came into play is last November. Really, if you back up to October, or sorry, early September, my husband and I found out we were pregnant with our second child. We had been trying for a long time, and it was not working, we'll say. And when we finally found out that we were pregnant, everything was amazing, right? We're like, "Oh my gosh, this is finally happening. Wow." And we are so excited. The dreadful wait of you find out you're pregnant till your first appointment was it's just the literal worst, for any parent. We went to that appointment and we were so excited. We had our son with us. We went to one of the fun places where they'll put the heartbeat in like the stuffed animal. And we were just so excited to be there as a family to see our baby. And there was no heartbeat. There was a baby, but there was no heartbeat. And they at first thought that I was just too early, like my period was off and kind of like the date was wrong. So they basically told me to go to the emergency room immediately. So I went to the emergency room on base here in Fort Campbell to find out that they still didn't have any answers to us. They really just thought we were going to have to wait this out because it was too early to determine that it was a miscarriage because the baby, my uterus was great. It looked the way it was supposed to look. My HCG levels were super high. So like all the things were in play. But over the next 6 weeks, I had my blood drawn at least 2 dozen times. I was in an emergency room a couple other different times. We went to 2 different hospitals for vaginal ultrasounds, and both of them basically looked at me and said, inconclusive. And the second one we went to, my husband came with me, and I remember looking at the lady, and she was so cold. It was ridiculous, just awful. And she just looked at me and she was like, "Ma'am, I'm not the doctor. I can't give you any of this information." And I just looked at her, totally tears in my eyes, crying. And I said, "My mental health is not okay. Like, what do you not understand about this? Like, this has been 6 weeks of pure hell. Can someone please tell me what's going on? Like, I deserve to know what is going on with my body. Like, somebody just tell me." And long story short, we ultimately ended up losing our baby, and November 15th was the official date that we went for a final ultrasound, and my uterus had collapsed, and it was very clear that that baby was not going to make it. Um, and I remember calling my copywriter because I had already started the process of the book. But I called him that afternoon and I said, the table of contents is wrong. We have to fix it. And he's like, what? I'm like, we have to document the storm because after that, so that was November 15th. And after that, I had to get to my black line again, right? I had gotten really far away from being super consistent at outbound prospecting, which was my superpower. I had gotten really far away from trying to grow or I'm sorry, to clean up the systems within my company, and I was just so focused on all of the other things. And also, frankly, the last 6 weeks leading into that, I hadn't prospected at all. I was in the middle of like trying to figure out what the heck was going on. That prospecting and really my company as a whole was the last thing I cared about. So, I remember getting a call from a very dear friend and a mentor, and she said to me, "Michelle, you have to get back to who you are. You got to." And I was like, "I don't know how to do that. I can barely do the dishes right now. Like, I don't even know what's going on." And she's like, "You just have to." And so from November 15th through the end of the year, I prospected like I have never prospected before. I was so relentless on it that I ended up I don't even know how many speaking gigs I got. I mean, dozens, right? Like so many webinars, so many podcasts. I mean, it was insane what was happening. And I had this kind of idea in my mind of, and somebody had said it to me, Michelle, you planted a lot of seeds. And I was like, yeah, I was preparing for rain, right? Because when the rain hit, all of those seeds would be ready to be sowed. And in November of 2025, or sorry, 2024, I wasn't sure how I was going to keep my business open because I was the only person making money and I was failing because I was going through this storm. In June of 2025, what is that, 7 months later, I had the biggest month of my entire career in 11 years. Um, and to me, that is the definition of getting back to your black line, and that is the definition of what this book is about, is when there is nobody clapping for you and frankly, life is excuse my French, I hope I can say this, when life is fucking hard, how do you keep going in that moment? And I truly just had to get back to what I was known for, which is outbound prospecting. I did it so religiously every day. And the fun part is I now teach that to people and I have been teaching that for years, but I had to, it's like, it's like a coach getting back in the game. That's what it felt like for me. It was like, I'm teaching everybody else how to do this, but now I got to go prove to myself that I can still do what I teach to everybody else. And it was this really, really emotional, but super impactful time in my life, and that's really the premise of the book.
Yeah, so I know we're really short on time. How much more time do we have? Like 5
About 10
minutes?
10 minutes or so.
10 minutes. Okay, so then I want to do two quick things. Advice to real estate agents, loan officers that need to like get up and start prospecting, right? Like they need to follow that black line. What is like top three things they need to do, or top five, whatever it is that you tell them? Like just good tactical advice.
Yeah, the best one, most important one is identify what your singular most important thing is that you have to do every single day without fail, right? So, as you heard me just describe, my single daily act that I do without fail religiously every single day is I send a message to someone that I do not know and I do it through social. So, and I talk about this. This is the beyond the method strategy. This is the black line, right? Which is sending a single message every single day to someone that you do not know and doing it through leverage, right? Meaning, who do you know that you can use, quote unquote, to build a bridge from that person to the next person? And that's a single daily act. But where you do it or with what intention is part two that I want to give everybody, which is what are the categories that you want in your business or what kind of opportunities are you specifically seeking? Right. So if you're a mortgage professional listening to this, is it new realtor partners? Is it new vendor partners? Are you recruiting? So are you trying to get other loan officers to come work with you or work for you? Whatever that is, right? I mean, you, for example, I would say you need to get on podcast too, probably that which should be a part of your game, right? So, what is the opportunity that you're seeking? And then that single daily act is done in one of those three categories. So, for me, getting on podcasts, doing webinars, speaking, those are obviously my big three. But that single daily act, I send a message to someone that I don't know, and I do it through leverage with the intention of getting one of those three things. Now, here's what I want to tell everybody. Prospecting is not complicated. It's not. It's very, very, very simple, but it can be done very, very poorly, right? So if you send a message, and I want everybody to think about this, how many messages do you get every day on Instagram and LinkedIn and think, wow, that was a slimy car salesman type of a message? Did they even like read my profile? Like, how many people did they just copy and paste that to? right? You do not want to be that guy or gal for that matter. So here's what I need you guys to hear me say. Do not start your messages with hello, I'd love to jump on a call with you, or immediately go into a pitch of any kind, right? Because the message is not about me, it's about you, right? It's about the person I'm trying to build the relationship with. Now, do I need to create some clout about who I am and why I deserve a reply? Of course I do, but that's part of the message, but that's not how it starts, right? So I think the important piece is use a lever, name drop, right? So in order for me to get a relationship with someone I don't know, who's the person that I can name drop to get me there? And how do I do it in a way that doesn't come across with a lack of humility or like, wow, Michelle just really likes herself, right? Like we don't want to come across like that. So it's very important that the structure of the message itself is done properly. So think about who are your levers. I want everybody to think about that right now, right? That's a big takeaway. Who in your life right now, in your business or in your life, both sides, right, personally or professionally, can you use as a lever? Meaning, could you name drop them to someone you don't know and have that be a good door opener, right? So, Renee is obviously an important person in my life. He wrote the forward of my book. And for me, Renee's been a lever for years with my relationship with him because I know that if somebody calls Renee and is like, "Who is this Michelle chick?" Like, if she were talking to you, that Renee, of course, would say, I hope, right? Still to this day, you would say yes. And that's a true lever because if you, Dino, are like, "Who is this Michelle chick?" What's the first thing you're gonna do? You're gonna call or reach out to that person that I name dropped and be like, "Is that actually accurate?" And the last thing you want is for it to not be. So, tactical and really simple. And I will tell you, you can very easily automate yourself out of these. So this is AI does not live here, right? We do not need to. And I was just on another podcast and we were talking about this. We have a lot of loan officers out there that like to send mass emails to 20,000 realtors hoping they'll get some replies. Um, what my challenge to you, right, is you don't need to do that. What you do need to do is you need to identify 20 really high value prospects that you really want to work with that align with you as person or as people that have things that they do in their day-to-day life that you also enjoy doing and that you align with and ask yourself, Dino, would I want to go on a walk with you on in a morning at a conference and actually would I enjoy that? Right? Like would that be fun for me or are we going to like not get along, right? Is it a personality match? So find and identify 20 very, very strategic alliances for you that make sense, that fill that or check that box of, I want to have a beer with you or I want to hang out with you. And then leverage your way to them through that single outbound message that you'll send every single day. And I have a saying in my world that if you send one message every day for 365 days and you do it through leverage, your business will not look the same in a year. Like that is a guaranteed fact. And I am literal breathing proof of that exact fact.
Awesome. That's great advice. Thank you. And then if somebody wants to work with you or your team, how do they do that?
Just reach out on LinkedIn or Instagram, Facebook too, but I'm definitely on Instagram and LinkedIn more. Michelle Berman-Mikel on LinkedIn and Instagram is Berman Media Social. But also, I'll say I answer all my own messages, so it is me.
Awesome. And I know we're getting really short on time. So, favorite book?
I mean, I'm not allowed to say my own, right? But no, the in all seriousness, High Performance Habits and Good to Great are my top two without a doubt. Build a Business You Love by Dan Ramsey would probably be number three. But High Performance Habits is without a doubt my number one. And I'll tell you, there's nothing better for a high performer than when you read a book about what it means to be a high performer and to see yourself in what you're reading. And
Is that the
really like,
one by Brendan Bouchard?
yes. Yep. Um, and I realized I was like 4 of the 6, and when I realized I was not 2 of the 6, I'm like, "Look, better work on those," right? So, it's a reality check and a gut check truly, but also it's affirmation, right? Of like, I am on the right path, I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I am going where I wanna go, but I gotta clean up some stuff.
Yeah, in fact, I just started reading it literally yesterday, and it did say that if you find yourself slipping at all, go back, take the test, and then find out where you're lacking, and then just hit it. Like keep hitting that one to get back on track again, right? Because you got to have all six. So, anyways, I
Absolutely.
can't wait to read the rest.
That is so crazy timing-wise that you
It
said that you
is.
and I just said that, that's wild.
Favorite quote.
Woo, this is an easy one for me, and, I'm gonna do my best not to get emotional when I say it, but, God gives you a mess to give you a message, and it's up to you to find it.
Love it. So listen, there's so much more I want to ask you. I know we don't have any more time, but I am
Hey,
going to
we'll
be
do a part two.
capping. What's that?
I said, hey, let's do a part two.
All right, that sounds good. And I'm going to be capping for everybody out there. I'm going to be capping this season one, creating a season two, and season two is going to be the 5 pillars of a successful mortgage advisor. So I want to ask you if you'll come back and just hit hard that particular pillar that you know so well. Guys, thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoyed the show as much as we did, or as much as I did. And remember, we're here to empower, equip, and educate you the way lending should be done by the absolute best in the business. So if you enjoyed what you saw, please do like, comment, and share it. That helps us out a lot. And we'll see you on the next one.